This is ACOFAE. Laura Marie and Jessica Marie proudly present A Court of Fandoms and Exploration, a podcast. Fair warning, everything the hosts say is explicit, full of spoilers and adult content and shall not be used against them. They have opinions. Let's try not to drag anyone for expressing themselves and just have fun for an hour. We all deserve it.
There are no major spoilers outside of the Iron Flower, but there is a brief mention of the Wicked King. Additionally, there are discussions surrounding politics, physical violence, sexual assault, sex work, domestic abuse, racism, and trauma.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to A Court of Fandoms and Exploration, your weekly deep dive into the YA literature and fandoms that we love. I'm Laura Marie.
And I'm Jessica Marie.
And today we are discussing The Iron Flower, Book 2 in the Black Witch Chronicles by Laurie Forrest, and one of, I guess, maybe two books that I've had to put down and walk away from.
Honestly, I wasn't expecting for it to hit as hard because, I mean, I put down books a lot of times. It's no secret. I cry. But this was just at a different level. And I don't know if it's because a combination of knowing like real world history and how applicable it is to this series, or just the political climate that we're in. And, you know, and it's just like you said, you have to put it down. It's really heavy shit. And it hurts. It hurts that even when we do put it down, I think I was texting you, I go, if you apply it to races, just like you have like the different races of Selkie and Fae and witches, etc. in the series, not everybody has that privilege to walk away and take a breath from a situation because they're living it every day. And I think knowing that and reading this series, especially like the second book, it just keeps hitting harder and harder. And you're taking a breath and you're like, what is happening? You need to walk away, but you don't, you know, I know it's just fantasy, but it just hit real life really, really hard.
And this is exciting because, Jess, you and I have not really talked about this series. Both of us have like a lot going on, like personally. So we haven't just been fangirling all week over the series, but I am so excited to hear what you have to say about this. So please just like dive into it. Take us away. I want to hear all of the things and all of the thoughts.
Well, right. In the intro of the book, the second book, like the first chapter after all the edicts and all the decrees that are being made, Ellerin, you know, because it picks up right where the first book left off, and she's just sobbing and crying. She's like, I don't want to be Gardnerian anymore. She's crying to Frenelia. She's like, and Frenelia is the first person who says like, look, we don't get to choose what we are, but we get to choose who we are. And I think that really just sets up how she chooses to live her life, knowing, you know, and I know we discussed it in the last episode, or sometimes you're obviously born into a family and that family might not be the kindest, but you can learn, you know, through exposure of other people or learning how you don't want to be. That's what Ellerin is making in her choices of like protecting her friends. Her friends have become family. I mean, obviously she has her brothers, but the people she's blood related to, she doesn't, in the people that the community she's brought up with, she goes, this isn't the type of person that I want to be. And it kind of just, something is happening every chapter in this book. It doesn't feel like there's a lull. Everything builds on each other.
And that is kind of one of the things I really like about this book in particular, but I guess maybe the series overall, but you really feel like, as you said, you feel it in this book. Everything happens. So much happens. I made a list of just kind of bullet points, but Ellerin and Yvonne have a talk that is very similar to this. They're like, you know, these impossible odds, but, you know, we thought that rescuing Naga was impossible, freeing the Selkies, you know, getting Ariel off the Nylanter berries, you know, all of these things that they did. When you think about it, like, they're just college kids, right? They're just college kids, and like they have destiny and like a higher calling. Okay, whatever. But they're actively working against this really it's a scary government system, and they're doing all that they can. And with the edicts, and I like that the edicts are there kind of every chapter or so, and they're numbered and they keep growing and they get more and more specific. So it's kind of like you feel everything tightening around you.
The whole time. And and you're also, again, it's not just about Ellerin. You learn about all of these characters, and you're growing attached to the characters, and you're seeing, you meet their families, you're understanding what they're going through. Your loss is their loss is your loss. Their fear is your fear. Especially because, again, I think you feel it so not just in a fantasy realm, it's just the political climate that we're in. And we never really left. It's just really at the forefront of discussion now, more or less. And you feel it, and you're holding out hope. You're struggling with these characters, and you're wondering what you can do to help them. It's a lot, but to see action being done and not being complacent. And there were many times throughout the book that, the characters were talking and they had to think bigger picture. Right. And that was, even from, all the friends in various races going to different parts of Earthia, and Ellerin knowing I have to stay back. We have to and then on top of that, I have to poison myself so I don't look like I'm complicit in everything. Or when I was going to say Danica, Diana's family, Rafe has to talk her off, after she threw herself off the cliff. He talked her back from, he goes what would your dad do? You have to think long-term. You have to think big picture. We have to think. And she had to everybody had to stop and be pragmatic about all the situations, as hard as it was, because you emotionally are also do this, just with the guy in the cottage who kidnapped the Selkie. And then finally, once they were escaping, you hear that the cottage guy was decapitated, and you're oh, that's Diana. That's my girl. I was so happy. I mean, there's no chronological order with this discussion, with most of the things we go. So it's all over the place, and there's action, there's stuff is happening. And through the whole time, it's still not over. We finished the second book and it still feels oh my gosh, it's just getting started again. Cause that's how the first book ended, where it's welcome to I was going to say revolution, the resistance, welcome to the resistance. And now it ends again on that. And here's another one. And here's another one. This is, what? I know this isn't talked about. This book series isn't talked about often. And I think, Laura, you brought up that it's being used in high school now, right?
I did. So because there is absolutely no one talking about this series beyond the press, that was the first book, and we discussed that in our previous episode. I went to Lori Forrest's Instagram. I went to her website. I went to, Black Witch, Iron Flower, hashtags on TikTok and Instagram, trying to get anything, right? I just want anything. But Lori Forrest on January 16th, 2019 says, I was told today that a high school is using the Black Witch in class as an example of entertaining creative writing that promotes tolerance and diversity. So, and then included on this is a Booklist star review, and I just have a little bit of it. And it says, developing real empathy for different races and species, Forrest uses a richly imagined magical world to offer an uncompromising condemnation of prejudice and injustice.
I mean, the fact that it's being brought into curriculum, I absolutely love. And even though it is YA, and we said in the first book, there's no spice, don't expect spice, but expect that uprising of wanting change and wanting better for the bigger picture and for a better world, as Aylin would say. I think it's a necessary read, not just for high school. I think this is something that can totally be dissected into any college level course. I mean, specifically if you're an intro literature class, absolutely. There's so much to pull from. And maybe I'm going to get some shit, but the last two books, and even the Iron Flower as an individual book, is better than Shadow and Bone trilogy. I can't stop reading this series, and I struggled, and we both did. We read it. You have the Netflix show coming out, but this is just, it's so like, this could be the next Magicians. You know how they like aged everybody up from the Magicians? Like, this would be a perfect series for that, I think.
Well, you can see it on camera. Jess, the one instance where we did talk about this during the week, I told you that something like a scene was coming up and I could see it in my head. I could see the colors. I could see the shot. You just needed the right music. And like on the screen, it would just be stunning. Jess, I know this scene is what made you put the book down. So do you want to talk about it?
Goodness. I mean, it started with Ellerin waking up. They were the Watchers, which I also think of, what's that shirt company that you get for Sam? With the conspiracy theories with the birds are the Watchers, but during the rape.
Birds aren't real.
Birds aren't real. I always think of that when they talk about the Watcher.
My favorite conspiracy theory. When people start telling you about conspiracy theories, you look them in the eye, you go, birds aren't real. And they shut right up. They go, what? Just a little tip.
But then I also think of them as robotic birds, kind of like a combination of the Hunger Games and the really creepy birds in The Wizard of Oz, where they're just like, but you hear screaming. People are coming, like 2 people are coming out of the woods. You find out that all the lupine were massacred. They run to tell Diana and Jared about their family. She's wailing in the cafeteria or, the dining hall. Everybody is, it's so chaotic and so much is happening. People are dying because they're wolves, there's no rhyme or reason to it. The Gardenarians they feel like they're the superior race.
And they want their land, right? Like,
and it always comes. Yeah, you continue to elaborate more because this is your second read, and I'm just, still, it was a lot.
The thing that is just so fucking heartbreaking about this whole kind of scene that we're talking about is right before it, they have this really beautiful scene in the forest. I say they, like, the found family, Ellerin and all, have this, they're in the forest and they're celebrating and everybody's happy. And she has this moment with Yvonne and, she goes to bed and then she wakes Ellerin and then she wakes up and she knows that something's wrong. And I think Winter is there too in the tower and they look out and my favorite detail about this is that there are white watchers, the birds, everywhere, right? They're everywhere.
And they're looking away too.
And they have their wings over their eyes. And the line is something like, like they're covering their eyes. They can't bear to witness what's happening, which is important because the birds are like a representation of like God, right? Like they're God, which is very interesting symbolism. Mm-hmm. And then so Ellerin knows that something's wrong with the bird. She sees the birds. She runs out of the tower. Then, like Jesse said, she sees the 2 survivors of the lupine pack, and just damn, it's a massacre. So, like, we were talking about how it's easy for authors in YA to kind of use language to gloss over genocide, right? We saw that in Six of Crows with Matthias and the Fierdans. This is not glossed over.
No.
They say very clearly they murdered everybody. They killed the babies. They say that a lot, actually, the emphasis on
murdering and the children.
Yeah, on murdering children. They say it over and over again as kind of like a litmus test. Like, this is really fucking awful, right?
Yeah.
They're murdering babies. And the Gardenarians are like, yeah, because they all need to die. And everyone else is like, the fuck?
Yeah. Well, even when Aisley comes into the picture a little bit later, because, she's been off screen in a way. she calls her father a murderer. She's been so complacent to ruling, to just being the obedient daughter for so long. And she finally calls him out on it, and he goes, what is this? And she's like, you're a terrible person. I'll never forgive you. Stop doing this. I fucking hate you. You're a murderer. And even when they're talking about the violence, that it's like you said, it's not glossed over. They're asking how the one, Andre's son survived, and they go, they didn't see him. He was under the dead bodies. Like, you're just,
yeah, it's very clear. The picture is painted. It's fucking devastating. Oh my God. And you know, speaking back to that, she's the one who stole the spell book that allowed Naga to be freed, you know, in the first place. All of that.
All of the characters interacting, like even Rafe wants to be mated to Diana, and it's supposed to be done in front of the whole pack. And now he's like, she doesn't have her family. She doesn't have her pack. Her pack is her brother now, her, you know, and everybody is so affected because they're so intertwined, and Gardnerian pieces of shit, you know, like Oh, well,
let's preface this. So, like we said, there were, before the massacre of the Lupine Packs, both Lupine Packs, the Northern and Southern Lupine Packs.
Right.
Let's make sure Diana and Jared are like the only ones left, as far as we know.
Okay.
Yeah. That's it. So, like, before all of this happens, though, people are arguing over like Diana and Jared, and they are working to get refugees through their land, right? They're trying to get amnesty for everybody so that they don't have to become lupine to seek shelter with the lupine pack, right? And to kind of like fuck you to the Gardnerians. And Diana works really hard for that.
Yeah. I was going to say, Diana is the one who pulled that all together, and she was like being super modest about it. And Ellerin, you know, in her dialogue, she's like, I know how hard Diana, like, she's like, you don't have to be lupine. You could come to our land. Like, you can be safe here.
Right. And then the Gardnerians get a hold of that, and then they murder everybody. So they're cutting off. Well, I mean, first of all, they exterminated an entire race. Let's just say that. And then cutting off any kind of safety anywhere, because you have to, because at this point, the only safe places are with the Amaz, right? And then in the Eastern Realm.
For now.
Yeah, that's it.
At this point in the book, the Eastern Realm is still considered safe.
Yeah, that's it. So everybody is trying to get there. And they just had, you know, murdering the lupine packs is a big fucking problem. And it's just horrible. And Diana and Jared, and both of them having very different reactions to it.
Yeah, their trauma responses were completely different.
I think that's great. I think obviously, like, nobody talks about these books. I mean, we're talking about it, but I think that needs to be talked about. Like, Diana and Jared shuts down. He goes completely into shock, and Diana goes on the offensive until she finally, until Rafe talks her down, as you said, like. Mm-hmm. And then they're gone. Then they leave.
I know we'll see them again in the next book. I love Diana. She is a leader. She is the alpha. They knew she was going to be the alpha. I love all the characters individually in their own way. There is such growth, maybe not from Bloodin and Iris, who are still in the kitchen. Like, what do you mean you're saving us? They're just like, to me, they're shitty. But at the same time, you understand, like, they're groomed that way. Everybody in their circumstances have been groomed to a certain point to have the beliefs that they believe until they choose that that's not the path that they want anymore. They don't want to have thoughts and prejudices like that. I don't know. It was just a very, I was not expecting this book to be heavy, but in a good way, because it's forcing conversation that might not be had otherwise.
So this book is very heavy. Another instance, Jess, where I know you had to, I don't know if you had to put it aside, but I know that you reached out and said, like, whoa, was when the cropping started. When they started, when Marcus Vogel started his slow...
Marcus Vogel is now like the dictator, essentially, of Earthia.
Yeah. The holy magedom, right? The holy magedom. Fucking asshole. But the cropping, right? So Marcus Vogel becomes in power. The Gardnerians start to celebrate and rise up, kind of, right? And in a violent mob mentality, they go out onto the campus and the city that the campus is in, and they start cutting the ears off of anybody that doesn't have a rounded ear, and cutting off all of their hair,
like shearing them.
Yeah, it's basically it's horrific. It is absolutely horrific, and yet I can see it clearly in my head, right? Like it's not that hard to picture a violent mob holding somebody down, right? It's fucking disgusting.
Yeah, not that this is okay, but not even in a quote, like a humane way. They're just shearing people left and right, cutting the points off their ears. People are just covered in blood because of the cropping. They're sobbing. Like it's terrifying. It's terrifying. You can see it. You see people just rioting, like they're happy that so many others are in pain, like that they feel entitled to treat people as insignificant, that they're not people, they're things. And they say that throughout the series, especially, from the second chapter, of The Black Witch, where Ellerin sees a Selkie and they just like make a connection. And Ellerin's aunt makes a comment of like, people keep them as pets, not as people, even though it's just a different race, Well,
let's talk about the Selkies. Let's talk about them. Something fantastic that I love about the Selkies is that the whole fucking time that Selkies have existed, nobody knew that they could talk. Nobody had any idea that they were like anything other than animals. It is absolutely insane to me. Like what?
And they treated them as animals, and they
they treated them so bad. Let's be clear. The Gardnerians use the Selkies as horse, right? They use them. They're brothels. They use them as brothels. Oh my God. Let's talk about Damian Bain.
Fallon's brother.
When Rafe goes to the brothel, and they're obviously they're trying to save the Selkies, right? Okay, let's back
so some of the males of the Found family group, I was going to say cadre.
No, they need a name.
No, but they do like the OG friends.
Yeah, I guess it's like Yvonne, Tristan, Rafe,
Diana, Jared.
Well, we're just talking about the men.
We're talking. Okay,
yeah.
Who? Gareth.
Yeah, Jared, Gareth. Do the Elf brothers? Does Winter's brother and his
Kale and Reese? No, because
okay.
They weren't there. They weren't like at university or something.
Okay. So I guess it's just those guys. They all go to different brothels to try to figure out where the Selkies' skins are, because
they're doing basically espionage.
Yeah, because the only way that the Amaz will save the Selkies is if they can prove that they know where their skins are.
Because the skin is what holds the power. Right. Like the full power of the Selkie. The Selkie is, they're basically very weak without that layer.
Right. And when you destroy the skin, the Selkie becomes like a living dead, like zombie.
Yeah.
Not like a violent zombie, just like a shell. There's like nothing there, and it would be a mercy to kill them. And Rafe sees Damian Bain go into like a room with two Selkies that had their skins destroyed. So their eyes are like opaque and they don't like speak or, oh my God, it's so fucking gross.
And then Yvonne, like both Yvonne and Rafe, they go, it was so Rafe was saying it was like I was getting high fives. Like they were so happy that I was there. And Yvonne was like,
me into a club.
Yeah. Welcoming me into a club. And Yvonne is saying like, there are people in there that maybe I could be interchanging the names wrong, but it's the good guys basically. And they're like, there were people that are in the resistance that I thought were like me, and here they are in a Selkie brothel. You could just see that they were like, these aren't good men. You know, they might be for the resistance, but that, you know, it's just like somebody can go to church. That doesn't make you a good Christian, you know?
Oh God, the Selkies. And then we should mention that Gareth is part Selkie. It's so heartbreaking, right? Like he can never. So Gareth being half Selkie, he can't like
he didn't
breathe.
know he was
Right.
half Selkie. Like he discovered it through Marina. He was just like, I enjoy the water. I knew I was something. I could hold my breath for a long time. Like the ocean calls to me, kind of like very Moana-esque. And then Marina says like, that's because you're one of us. And then they just like immediately had a connection, because he's like, oh my gosh, somebody who understands me and I don't understand me yet. It was and it's bittersweet, because then, you know, you find out that, and you also find out that the Selkie, the reason they're on land is because of some curse that kind of pulls them to the land. And later you find out that there's this magic that should help break the curse. So the Selkie are basically never on land again. You know, I think there's a lot of things, moving parts going on in this book.
It's sad too, right? Like Gareth says, like, I can never go home. I can never go with you. I can't breathe underwater. Like I am like banned from this one place that I just want to go and like be accepted, because he's not accepted in Gardnerian because he has like silver streaks through his hair. There's just so much going on. Jess, did you expect the reveal of Yvonne as the Icarus of prophecy?
Never. I did not see that happening. I really just was like, okay, he's not killed. He's part Fae. He's fire Fae.
Yeah.
Yeah. I did not like, that was, it was one of those things where it was a plot twist within a plot twist. So you had no idea. And that like his tattoo was actually hidden wings. How cool. How fucking cool. I love me a Fae male.
And like dragon wings. They make it very, very clear that, you know, they're dragons.
Like, all dragons are Icarus. And Elloren's just like still wrapping her head around everything.
She's like, what? So great. And I like that they go like hand in hand, and, you know, to the Sarah Dalfar, her old professor.
Okay.
Yeah. At the very end, they're
right.
like, we need to go tell people that like Elloren is the Black Witch of prophecy and Yvonne is the
like
Girl of prophecy.
Yeah.
We're the 2 points, you know, and we got to tell people. That was really good.
But like tell the people they trust, because right now the mage, the mage Gardnerian government crap, right now they're thinking it's Sage's baby and Fallon, and Fallon and there's like an, I don't want to say there's like different throughout the book. It's broken into parts, and then depending on the part, sometimes there's a prologue for like part 3 or part 4. And there's a prologue where it's Fallon and Damien talking. And it's like Fallon is even thinking she's the Black Witch. I can't wait till she gets her ass handed to her. Oh, I cannot wait. And I know like she's also kind of being how Nikasia is when it comes to Cardan and Jude. She's like, oh my God, did Cardan kiss you? And she gets like that with Lucas. And
Elloren gets the last laugh there.
Oh, I can't. Yeah. But she's like forced to be what? That's a whole other thing. She's forced to be one-fasted to Lucas, like just no consent. And like, I don't know. I think Lucas is going to play out better than I think, or I had initially thought, because he does bring a point. He goes, once they're fasted, they're like, where are we taking you? And he's like, she can go wherever the fuck she wants. Like he goes, I don't want this. She doesn't want this. And he's like, you don't see it, but I am protecting you, like in a weird way. But then I don't know why I want to say Mal. Yvonne is binded to Ellerin. And okay, so I think we talked about in the first episode, wand fasting is basically like marriage in the Gardenarians. And then to be binded in Dragon is to be like commit, is like the same concept, but there's also like something deeper that they have a connection. He could sense whenever she's hurt, all this stuff. And that's why he wouldn't kiss her. Like all a binding takes is a kiss. So like, that's why everything's like so slow burny throughout the series so far. And then he finally kisses her, and she, you know, she's already said like, I don't want to be wand fasted to Lucas. I want to be fasted to you. And they know they can't because they're star-crossed lovers. And then he finally kisses her, and you find out that now he's binded to her, but because she's not part dragon, she's like married and having like this other thing, but nothing, like everything that's happening is consensual in one way, but not in the other. So everybody, I love love. I do love love, but I also love that they're also being like, we have to take a step back. Even when they go to the professor to say like, hey, I'm the witch and he's the it girl. And the witch admits like, we didn't know what your intentions were. So we didn't know you, obviously we didn't want you to know you had that power. You know, you wanted to see where your intentions lied. And after like they take a breath to where they are emotionally, and they are totally in love with each other, they know that they need to be on opposite ends of the earth for themselves as well as like the greater good right now, because you also don't want the Gardenarians to know that they know what's at, you know, that right now it's like the resistance is in like a better position, maybe not in politically, but long term, because they have this unknown that the mage don't know about.
And
that sounds like sorry, it was really wordy.
It makes perfect sense to me. But we read the book. One of my favorite things about this book is just how realistic it is with how people kind of treat Ellerin. So, and I say that by like, I was reading and I was like, she's crying again. She's crying again. She's upset. She's crying again. But I was thinking about it. It's like, okay, look, if I were 18 in college, failing all my classes, you know, trying to do this other thing with like my relatives breathing down my neck and being constantly bullied, you know, all of these like pressures on me. Like, yeah, the other day I dropped my keys and that was the end of it. You know, like I lost it. So I get it. I get that Ellerin has these moments of just overwhelming despair and helplessness, because up until the very, like, I guess kind of end of this book, she doesn't believe or know that she has power, right?
I think she thinks like it's, I don't know if it's like a self-imposter thing, or she feels like something's there, but that's not her. And everybody really has just used it as an amplifier. And she calls Lucas at you. She's like, Lucas, you only want to fast me because, you know, I might not have my power, but like you have access to it. And he goes, well, I'm not going to lie. Like this part of me was like,
awesome,
like I was, you know, like that's pretty awesome. This part of me was like strengthened for a week. This other power of mine was strengthened for a month. And that was just from a kiss. Like, imagine if we like wand fasted some more, and, you know, you're like, oh gosh, Lucas. But you know, she doesn't want to be used either. She just knows there's something there, but doesn't know what, which is like the running joke at the end.
Exactly. And that's because she was wand tested by her uncle and she burned down the fucking forest. And then the second time she was wand fasted, Cam Vin from the Vutrin sorceresses gave her a rune blocked wand so it wouldn't work It never would have worked. It wouldn't have worked for anybody. But Cam Vin says that she knew that Ellerin was powerful when she dropped the wand, because it would take an enormous amount of power to even feel anything, from using a rune block wand like that. It was just like, damn. So while we're talking about the Vutrin sorceresses, let's talk about the Amaz. Because the Amaz are this wonderful plot. I don't know. It's just this wonderful kind of addition to the story that just makes it very like rich and complicated, and it weaves like storylines, and it goes back to what I was saying earlier. Like, so much happens.
But let's like refresh that, from the first episode. The Amaz is a group of women, a group of people who are women, and it's their own community, their own, would you say race, or is it just a group? I don't want to say that, because they're women. Yeah,
I think it's just women, because they accept anybody.
Any women. Yeah, no men. They accept any women, and I guess the people that come to the Amaz go to them for like reasons. Right.
You want to be like a warrior. You want to be strong. You want to have you've been wronged in a way, and this is your library under the mountain where you can feel safe and heal. It
reminded, and there's I don't remember, I didn't get the quote exactly, but there's a part that I thought was really poignant to bring up, that, when all the races are trying to flee, and obviously everything, as you think the Lupine land, it might be the area that winds up not being the area. And then there's a part where Ariel and Winter, like Ellerin brings them to the Amaz, and one of the Amaz women says, there's a reason that you brought them here. There's a reason they feel safe. And it was just kind of determining, because Ellerin was trying to question why her and Yvonne couldn't be there, to have a man there. And she makes a comment. She goes, well, why do you think that there's a reason that this is where people feel safe? And I thought that was just that, like, I took a breath, because I'm not a man hater. I'm not. I unfortunately love men, there's a TikTok where it's like, I don't like men. That's unfortunately, that's where my decision goes when it comes to, sexuality, and they're not great all the time, but I digress. The fact that that's where they feel safe, that's where they feel strong, that's where they feel like they can bring somebody. I think it's really telling, and it really reminded me of the Mascara and Wonder Woman, where you have all these Amazonian women who are strong, who find a sense of purpose in self. And they it really reminded me of that safe place. And it was never something to be concerned about, because they were like each other's protectors at the same time.
The thing that I really like about the Amaz is that they don't fuck with Ellerin right away, right? They're like, look, we're putting you under heavy ass guard. You can be here in the Amaz lands. You can do your business, because they're, at this point, they're trying to convince them to help the Selkies. It's like, I'm putting you under guard. You're going to be watched. We don't trust you. The men can't be here. And Ellerin gets like all her feathers ruffled. She's like, but you can't live in a black and white world. Like, not all men are bad, right. that whole like argument. And the Amaz are just like, okay, then get the fuck out, because this is our land. And you aren't going to come in here, miss, freshman in college coming in trying to disrupt the system. They don't fuck with her, but they do end up respecting her and working with her and kind of doing, I guess, becoming allies. Like, I feel like through this book, Ellerin just kind of works really hard to do the best that she can in the situation that she's in, and also try to make allies and I don't know, just do everything in her power to be different from everyone's expectations.
She's fighting against the stigma that was the perception of her that was created because of her likeness to her grandmother, Carnissa. She's definitely earned her respect. I think one of the nice things that the Amaz says to her, once she brings Ariel, after she drops off Ariel with Naga, and then like Naga brings Ariel to like her final resting place, is that Ellerin is going to say bye to the Amaz, and the Amaz is like, I'm going to see you in a couple weeks with some, like either a Selkie or this other person. Like, this isn't bye. Like, I've learned at this point that the type of person you are, you're about the greater good. And, and I think that's really, it hasn't been addressed, and I don't think Ellerin has comprehended it yet, but she is earning respect slowly and surely, but I don't think she's processed it because she's spent her entire life being told, like, not even her, her entire life with this one expectation of her as her grandmother, and only for it to be thrown in her face when she's met with other people who aren't Gardnerian.
Right. Genetics, man.
Fucking A.
So while we're with the Amaz, let's talk about Sage. Sage Gaffney. And the color purple, which is kind of weird. But so when Ellerin is in with the Amaz, she sees the birds, right? And she hears somebody, she feels like a pull. She hears someone like calling to her in her head. And she leaves, and she uses, I don't know, like she uses the wand to like touch the runes, the rune barriers, and they dissolve, right? And she walks right through, and she finds herself randomly at Sage Gaffney's cottage, who has, she's taken refuge with the Amaz, and she's purple. And I love that because, Sage says, like, what's the most scandalous color to a Gardnerian? Like, what could it possibly be? And it's purple. And purple is my favorite color. It's just like, ha, ha, ha. But I also find it funny that purple is a color that's very offensive to the Gardnerians, and yet there's a whole race of people that have like purple hair and purple skin, and most of them are sent off to the islands, right? It's like a prison camp. It's just like, whoa.
But I forget Sage's color. It was like it manifested because it wasn't always purple. Because wasn't she Gardnerian? Because she was Ellerin's neighbor.
Yeah, she's Gardnerian, but it just like her magic manifested purple. So she was like, I'm purple.
Is her, I feel like maybe I had a brain block for a second. She's with the Amaz, so that means her child is a female Icarol.
No.
I thought her son
was a male.
Right. So how?
I think there's exceptions for babies of maybe prophecy.
For maybe prophecy, because then Andras, his mom was Amaz, he was not, and then his mom like left the Amaz so she could keep him, because otherwise they were like, you have to give up your kid.
Right. So I think just for
maybe it's like it's like prophecy baby.
Yeah.
Because even when the other, because then when Andras had a kid with one of the Amaz women, she gave her son to the Lupine.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Actually, now that you've just kind of like gone through that, you remind me of a good point. Ellerin's professor, when she's still like doing school stuff,
Jules
Christian, gives her a bunch of comparative religion, like books. He's like, get confused, like read all of these religions, because it's mentioned that like every religion has its own version of this prophecy, right? And they're all...
This isn't this book, because the first book was just like learn the history of the Gardnerians from different POVs.
Yeah. And this one is learn the religion of everybody, and get really confused and kind of see that we all have the same prophecy. It's just a little bit different.
Is this kind of like, did that trigger your world studies, your religious studies minor? You're like, huh.
Yeah, I mean, comparative religion basically is my religious studies minor. Yeah, because I did comparative religion and women and gender studies. Yeah, it was awesome. I know it brought me back to like these papers I used to write. But yeah, no, I really like that. And I like that she does it. And what I was getting at is I like how people speak to Ellerin when it comes to like a world view. You were talking about how people have to be like, take a step back and be practical, right? I like, this is not surprising. I like Lucas. I like how Lucas, well, first of all, I like that they cannot lie to each other.
Yeah.
I mean, of
Do
course,
we find out more of I mean, I know right now that's like, I just feel it. Everything's like, I feel a fire. I feel a pull, blah, blah, blah. Is that explored more in the third book?
Is it explored more in the third book? A little bit. But yeah, a little bit.
Okay.
But it's more.
It's not a major plot point. So
no,
I guess.
No,
okay.
it's not. It's just something unique between the two of them.
Mm-hmm.
I really enjoy it. Like, obviously we're all about communication here, and it forces them to either like communicate 1,000% or not communicate at all.
Well, he says at one point, like they weren't talking and she asked him a question and he didn't answer. And his only answer was, you have no idea how much I wish I could lie to you right now. Like, so he's like, I cannot lie. So I just have to keep my mouth shut.
And I like this trope because it's not like Folk of the Air where like Faye can't lie. This is only between Ellerin and Lucas. Like, these two people cannot lie to each other. And then at the end we find out like they're wand fasted. Aunt Vivian basically murders her brother, right? Like,
not Ellerin's brother, her
Vivian's
own
brother. Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, Edwin, right? Like she basically murders him.
Which we knew since the first book. Right. The second, she's like, he's under my care. I was like, fucking bullshit.
My care. Yeah. Yeah. No, that, absolute bullshit. But like, died in Ellerin's arms. Horrible. And then we find out because of the time that she planned to do this, it's the loophole. So like, Edwin isn't the head of the family anymore. Vivian is, because Rafe doesn't turn
20 for 3 days. She timed it so she had control over Ellerin for 3 days. And in that 10-minute, she fasted her to, she as in Vivian fasted Ellerin to Lucas without her consent.
Yeah. Let's talk about that fasting too. Okay. So obviously we're not a fan of it because there is no consent there, but there is, as you said, an inkling that Lucas, there's something with Lucas, right? Because he's like, she has my permission to go and do whatever she wants, right? Like, did you expect that from Lucas, or were you expecting him to like take her? Like,
I mean, did I expect? I didn't know what to expect from Lucas, honestly. I thought he was going to be kind of baddish, but then in this book, maybe he's the morally gray character in this book, because I feel like there's inner workings, because he even makes a comment to Ellerin saying how the only way that you can dismantle the government is from within. So this is something clearly he's thinking about and wondering, okay, I don't agree with any of this. And you're finding that out because of that bond, and he can't lie to her. He goes, I didn't know. Like, when I signed up for this wasn't where the direction it was going, and he's clearly put thought into, how
Revolution.
Is it going to, yes. And from Ellerin's brothers being imprisoned, he made sure that they were released. I think he's trying to find ways at this point to let Ellerin know that he's on her side, whether she sees that or not. Right now, even with the fasting, he's like, you should be lucky that your aunt is still letting me fast to you, because anybody else is going to beat you, is going to rape you, is going to do everything without your consent. He knows the connection that they have, but he also understands that they have, I don't want to say miscommunication, but there are barriers there that cause their restrictions. And even when Ellerin, her and Yvonne didn't even do anything. They were just found, falling asleep in each other's arms kind of thing. And she makes a comment of like, I didn't sleep with him. Lucas makes a comment in front of Vivian saying, we'll see about that. again, just for show, because nothing was ever consummated.
Right. And I think he says that to kind of, was like, we'll find out, because what do you think Vivian would have done to Ellerin if, she had slept with the Celt or like with Yvonne? Like what would she have done?
I mean, would she have banished her again? Because she was already banished the brothers. She already went on her tirade about how her mother almost married a Celt. And then her father, which is Vivian's brother, took pity on Ellerin's mother. And that's the only way that like they happened. She just like disregarded that. She's like, oh, I think she's like some professor now. And we know that, I mean, we knew that it was going to be Jules, which I think you said that there's a novella for them, right?
Yeah, there's two. So there's two novellas that have been combined into one book, and it's called Rebel Mages. And one book is about Tesla and Ellerin's mom and her story. And the other one is all about Sage and and Sage growing up with the white wand and how she got it to Ellerin.
Okay. Like up to that point kind of thing, that transition of the one. Okay. I wonder if she would have banished her. Vivian would have banished, she's one of those people that I don't even know. I feel like in her mind, she would think banishment was too easy. So she would have tortured her somehow, however that might be, because we already know there's nothing that she thinks is wrong. She thinks other races are wrong. She doesn't believe killing races. She truly believes in genocide. If you're not Gardnerian, she believes in genocide. And you find that out. So I mean, I could even see her trying to fast her to Damian Bain, knowing the vile person that he is. And it would be torture, because then she's in with Fallon Bain, knowing, like, currently, I'm thinking that she's the Black Witch.
Ooh, yeah. Ooh, God. So obviously Aunt Vivian is the worst person. I mean, obviously not the worst person in this book.
Vogel and then Vivian.
Yeah. But I would say if Aunt Vivian has one redeeming quality, just one.
Remind me, because I don't know.
Aunt Vivian will do anything for fashion. Aunt Vivian gives no fucks about the rules of Gardnerian fashion. You know, tits out, jewels on, color, embroidery. Oh, Jess, I know you want to talk about that dress.
Which one? There's the first, the iron flower dress, which was just gorgeous and super low cut. And you know, I have boobs. So like, that's totally up my alley. And then she makes a comment, you know, she's like, Ellerin's wearing this dress. She has a cloak on. She's being all demure. And then she like whips the cloak off when Lucas comes, and he's just drooling, just absolutely. And, you know, Ellerin's feeling herself because, you know, yeah, you could hate somebody, but like, if you could still feel good about how you look. And then later on, she, you know, her aunt basically imprisons her in her room with all the guards surrounding her, understanding that Lucas is coming back for not the Yule Ball, but for something else. And Ellerin sees the dress and she goes, my aunt has eyes everywhere, because she totally knows that Lucas went crazy over this first dress. And if I thought the first dress was inappropriate, this second dress. And, you know, in our head also, like in my head, it's just everything's like super like plunging neckline. But for all we know, it could just be like showing a little bit collarbone, because they're used to dressing as like, and, you know, they say how conservative their dressing is.
High neck, long sleeves, you know, down to the ankles, you know, skirts not
things
form-fitting.
Are covered. Black. Everything's covered. Yeah. Very like, yeah.
And this is a good segue into the split. I mean, the politics are huge in this book, but the split that's happening within like the Gardnerian, like political situation. So like they're breaking. There's a section that's breaking off, and they're like the ultra conservatives, right? So like they're called something, and they're ultra conservatives, and they wear the white bird emblem. And then they only buy from stores that only have workers that have the white bird emblem, because they are like the conservative sect of the mages. And then the less conservative sect wears the silver Earthia orb. And then they talk about
on this.
Yeah, they talk about that when they talk about the flag change, where so like when
I do remember there she was going up a hill and they were like, here's the Gardnerian flag. And then I do remember the switch. And then there was another, like the Vin something flag was also on the field because they were trying to find allies. Meanwhile, Ellerin gets the Vutrin, essentially is like, well, don't break your ally with the Gardnerians. We're going to help you at least escape with the resistance. And she was like, here's my stipulations. She's like, and we'll give you the poison. We'll poison everybody and you and like whoever you need to get out of here. And they were like, well, what are your stipulations? And Ellerin was like, all these people.
Yeah, everybody. She had a list. She had a huge list when they read it out in the kitchens. Yeah.
And I loved the poisoning of it all, because I loved the quote, if one can't be powerful, it pays to be clever. And it just forces you to you have to think outside the box. And it's, I know a lot of times it can be frustrating, especially in university when you have to take like your gen ed courses and you're like, I don't need this. This isn't what I want to do. But when you find like a certain niche thing that you might enjoy that somebody else doesn't, it kind of, or even just like a skill set that's particular to you, it helps you kind of elevate, like, what can you bring to the table? Like in regards to diversity, I know a lot of times when we talk about diversity, people automatically assume races, but like, it's also like diverse in the content that you bring, and the skill sets you bring to, like even like in a professional environment too. And I thought that was really cool. She's like, just like, Jules was like, my cleverness was calligraphy. So he's been forging all these birth certificates, and then hers is going to be apothecary, which is like helping her, which is not just like poisoning everybody, but how many times has she like made little concoctions to help, or salves to help in the kitchen to help other people that they could not have afforded otherwise. Like, and she's not doing it for any other reason except for like, she wants to do it altruistically. Like she's thinking, she gains nothing from this.
Oh, Ellerin.
To see her growth is it's fast moving and it's very nice. Like I know we see a lot of growth in these protagonists in the YA books, but now I'm at a point you're cheering her on because you also know you're not just cheering her on. You're cheering everybody on, but Gardneria.
Yeah. You're cheering on the resistance, and like, you always want to cheer for the resistance. Ellerin is powerful. We end this book with her like needing training, right? She says like, I need training. So like, you can kind of see where it sets it up as an Heir of Fire kind of training situation in the next book. And, that's just fantastic. I just want to point out something that Jared says in the very beginning of this book, in when they're at the ball. And Ellerin is saying like, okay, so, but before this, the Gardnerians take over. I don't know if we've made this very clear. The Gardnerians take over everything. But in the beginning of this book, when they still haven't made the grasp for power yet, the edicts are still kind of coming in, and the Gardnerians take over the like ruling kind of like city council or whatever for the university. So the decor and the holidays and stuff are slowly being skewed towards Gardnerians. So when it comes time for the Yule Ball is only for Gardnerians, and the decorations are Gardnerian centric. And Jared goes because we love Jared, and he just like wants to see it. And he goes, and he's like, it's beautiful. You have all of these trees everywhere. And he's like, you love these trees. You worship these trees. You had to kill all of these trees to make these decorations. It's like a huge swath of forest that you just cut down for like no reason because it's pretty. And I think Ellerin says something like, well, in our holy book, it says that we need to cut down the forest because that's where the evil ones live. And we, stamp out the evil ones by cutting away their homes. And then we use the wood for our homes. and for wands. And it's just like, that's fucked up shit, man. So, Jess, obviously you're excited to read the next book. What are your wrap-ups on this?
I can't wait for the third book. I think I was telling you before we started recording, every time, or maybe I said it in this episode, every time you think this is what, like the book's just getting started, it ends. And now I'm like, okay, now it's getting started. Now it's getting started. I said it before, I'll say it again. This is so much better than Shadow and Bone. The trilogy, I love it. I'm immersed in it. I want to know more. I'm also kind of worried that the second book was so good that the third one might kind of like fall flat. I don't know. I'm very excited. I'm excited for people who I hope decide to read this, not like for us, but I do hope it gets some traction. Like, I think there's going to be a lull on book talk for some time. Like, we're in summer, like a lot of the bigger books that we've been kind of reading, they've had their follow-ups, they've had their Netflix is out. We're kind of like in that lull. So people are going to probably start like looking for more, whether it's in the fantasy genre or not. And I think this is just a perfect segue to kind of get to be excited and stay excited about things. I mean, there's no rush.
There's also no fan art.
Yeah.
There's no fan art here. And I know last episode, I sent you just like the only thing that I could find. And it's just like a bunch of Gardnerians who are like kind of all like the same. And then, kind of the supporting characters, but now we have a lot more supporting characters. And as I said earlier, I went through kind of the hashtags on social. There's not much. Jess, I think I sent you a couple sketches of like Diana and Jared and like maybe one of Freya and Velasca, but there's nothing. And it's such a rich world that artists could really kind of make these characters their own. And it's just like an untapped kind of gold mine, I feel like.
And I think that you bring up a good point, because I think of artists like Dominique Wesson, and when there's not a lot of art out there, you have artists who can create things, and that soon becomes canon, and like you bring up a good point. There's so many different races. And I just had a question in regards to fantasy. How there, you can hear about the same Selkies and Fae and witches and dryads and wyverns. Are they across all platforms in fantasy? Visually, they look the same? Or is it like Holly Black has an idea of wyverns in one way and Laurie Forrest has dragons and wyverns in another? Or is it pretty kind of like, these are your staples and then how you create your universe is completely different?
I think there's like a very basic template, and then you can kind of like build your own kind of character, I feel like, and that is absolutely no discredit to anybody that does, their own work. But yeah, I think I'm just thinking back at like the things that I've read. Yeah, like visually, and then they're like their characteristics. Can they lie? Do they growl? Is there roaring? Are there fangs? Those are all different, because in this series we have, the Fae. There's lots of different kinds of Fae, and they all have different characteristics, and they all have different powers and stuff.
Well, like just like because it's like it's almost like, I want to say elemental Fae, not just like, how we have the elementals in from Blood and Ash, but I feel like you have the fire Fae, the water Fae, the earth Fae, and like Tyranny is a perfect example of, she had this glamour, and then you find out like, she's this beautiful, like shimmering every single various shade of blue, and she just starts crying, and everybody else is crying. Like, they're happy for her. They're happy. Like, they're like, she's been hidden under this glamour for all this time, like, and that she was like, I look like my mom. Like, I thought that was such a sweet moment. And even like thinking of Marina, in my head, she was like a glittery Mystique from X-Men with gills. To what you said, it's so rich that you can visualize, but we are not artists. We do not have that talent.
No talent
to put these thoughts to paper. Like, we do not have that.
No, and it could be done, I mean, so beautiful. There's descriptions of like rose-colored skin and just, tinted paint. Oh, it could be so lovely. As you said, I hope this encourages people to kind of give the series a look. And after the gut punch of the world building in the first book, you can kind of step off of there and fight with the characters against that and root for their resistance and see the beauty that's kind of in there.
I think and I think the gut punch is necessary. I think it's a needed wake up call for a lot of people who are reading this. You're like, oh shit, start doing that internal work and be reflective in your, if you're kind of like taking a step back and you're like, this is real world shit, then there's a reason, and it should be processed that way.
Mm-hmm. And of course, there's dragons in this. And of course, shout out Literary Libra. We know you love dragons.
All righty. So next week, you have our rundown. We'll go from there. And you can follow us on Instagram at ACOFAE Podcast. You could also follow us on TikTok, ACOFAE Laura and ACOFAE Jessica. We are pretty active on basically everything right now. So thanks for listening. Thanks for your time. This is still a lot of fun.
Thanks for sticking around for so long, everybody. Make sure to hit us up. We want to talk about it. So thanks.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.